Hey guys, good evening, good evening. Hope you're all well, hope you're all dry. It's another kind of gray, it wasn't too wet today, but it was gray. Very gray day. And I think tomorrow we're going to get a little bit of dryness and then back to rain on Thursday. Who the hell knows? Thankfully, we do the show inside, so regardless, we have our time. Our time has been carved out, and tonight we're carving it out for Leo Zagami. He'll be on with us in a few minutes, and I want to discuss not only what is coming up starting tomorrow with the Conclave in Rome, the Vatican, I should say. There's more. There's more than that. He's got a 12th book coming out. It's actually the final book, I believe, of the Confessions of an Illuminati series, which is, well timed, just the way it is. The Jesuit World Order. And we have the death of the first Jesuit Pope, and let's see where it all goes from here. So I want to figure that out. I want to throw a lot of interesting questions toward Leo, see where it all ends up. And then when we have some alone time together in the second hour of the show, I want to go and stop in on something that's been developing over the last couple of weeks in a little bit more of a visual public way. It's been getting around, but I haven't had any place to stick it. And that is of the claims of the one true Pope. There's been claims made. A documentary filmmaker, somebody who was studying and reporting on cult activity all over the place, UFO, alien cults, and all that stuff. And now he has realized that he's the Messiah for everybody, and he's been putting himself out there. I want to jump into this because it's pretty interesting. It really is. It's just interesting. It's a load of shit, but. There's something for everybody. And of course, people fall in line with it, and you just watch the gullibility and you watch the malleability. Oh man, there's just so much there. But that's what we have. So we're going to be talking about the conclave. We're going to be talking about more hierarchies of the secret world order, and then we're going to be going into a little bit more trending topic, but also related because it has to do with the matters of the soul and cults and spirituality, and of course the how people behave in groups. It just happens. It's just one of those things. So welcome to the show. It's great to have you on with me. I'm so happy to be jumping into this tonight, 7:02 p.m. And I have a couple of announcements to make real quick. Number one, we have a new P.O. box. Okay? I want everybody to be aware of this because there's many of you who send me stuff. Obviously, I'm just going to have to go pick up. There's going to be forwarding and all that, and I'm going to have to be doing pickups at the old location. But there is a new P.O. box. It's in the description of the episode starting tonight. There's also it's been updated on the sponsor us page on quitefrankly.tv. There's a new P.O. box. Take note of it. Okay, just wanted to throw that out there. So you can send all your dishwasher detergent there. Anything I got another bottle of dishwasher detergent sent to me yesterday. So I'm sure somebody in Texas who really needed that dishwasher detergent is like, where the hell is it? It's with me. It's over here in Westchester. I don't even have a dishwasher. So maybe I'll give it away as part of some gifts. I want to give things away in May, and that's what we'll do. So just want to put it out there. New P.O. box. Go ahead. And also, just remember, if you are subscribed to the show and you are a sponsor through Patreon and Subscribestar in particular, because of the nature of those platforms, I post a lot of things there during the week, behind the scenes, little videos of me and Aurora, doing work, her doing her, whatever, just things from Studio B, little, I don't know, pictures, whatever the hell it is. But there's a lot of activity there. And I don't know how well the notifications are, because on Subscribestar, when I post something, there will be likes, there will be comments, it'll be a lot of activity there. Patreon is pretty quiet, so I don't know how many of you get notifications. I just want you to know that there is a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff you might be missing out on, because it just doesn't seem like it's getting to people. But one way or another, thank you for your support. And I just want you to get the full value of it all. So pay attention to that. All right. With that, let's just jump right into this. We have to get this one going because I want to read a little something to set the table for Leo, and we'll be right back.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's
Okay. Welcome. It's the real show now. So, here is a little bit of what we got from, this is from CBS News, I think yesterday or the day before. And they're preparing, all types of preparations being made. The Vatican for the conclave that starts tomorrow. And it's, they released some videos of them putting the chimney in. I don't know if you saw this. Take a look at this.
The Vatican Fire Brigade has put up the famous chimney on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay reports from Rome, just 5 days before cardinals gather for the conclave to choose the next pope.
Can you
imagine?
Here in
St. Peter's Square, that mood of mourning over the death of Pope Francis has shifted to one of excitement over who his successor is going to be.
Over the
you
chimney.
Ask for a better vantage.
So I wanted to show you guys the chimney being put in there. I missed the mark. Oh, there we go. There you go, right up there. See? They're putting in the chimney. The kitchen is complete. So it's just the little things. Little things are done. So excited. I don't know. This stuff excites me. It always does. There's so much intrigue because it's bigger. It's bigger than anything. Really is. And we'll see just how big it is. Talking to Leo tonight. Here's another one for you. I don't know how much this is going to really play into the events of the rest of the week and into next week, however long this all takes. But Archbishop Vigano was talking about this Vatican China deal. That's essential, he says. This is on LifeSite. Essential for the globalist plans for a new world order. Millions of persecuted Chinese Catholics face betrayal by a corrupt clergy backing Beijing's communist regime, compromising the Catholic faith and independence of the church. Now, again, I don't know what this has to, if this is going to have anything in particular with the conclave, though, you know, it's all linked to how everything has been run by under Francis over the last 13 years or so, and who's going to get the baton passed to them and carried on, or if there's going to be some kind of a derailment, I don't know. But listen to this, just on a geopolitical angle. Asia News, when you talk about deep state, deep church mingling, especially when that has been articulated since 2020 with Vigano. Asia News Agency has reported that on April 28th, the diocesan clergy of Shanghai elected Father Wu Jianlin as their bishop. The same thing happened on April 29th with the election of Father Li Jianlin, as Bishop of the Diocese of Xinjiang. Both appointments come from the schismatic patriotic church. Okay? They were made in clear violation of the terms of a secret agreement that the Vatican signed with Beijing government in 2018 and renewed in 2022 and 24 for 4 years. Now, the clauses of this agreement, which is officially secret, Vigano writes, although some details have leaked out, are said to provide, on the one hand, that the Holy See recognizes the Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association as a part of the Catholic Church and that the Chinese Communist Party has the authority to appoint its own bishops. And on the other hand, that the Pope should be recognized to have, at least in theory, the right to veto such appointments and to ratify the removal of legitimate bishops. that the Communist Party intends to replace with other bishops of its own nomination. Okay, so there's veto power in there, but still, this is something right here. I just want to get this next part in. If the Holy See, up to and including the pontificate of Benedict XVI, did not agree to sign any agreements with China, this led to an open persecution of Catholics, lay people, clergy, bishops, to which only possible response was public words of condemnation by the popes, the pressure of international diplomacy, and the application of sanctions by Western nations against China for human rights violations. But the arrival of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, who Vigano refuses to call him Pope Francis, completely disrupted 70 years of firm opposition from the church, deceiving Catholics and handing over the faithful and the clergy of the clandestine church to their own persecutors. Gotten to the point where there was a lot of things going on out there where Francis, in his own way, would even shy away from calling China anti-democratic. I've seen that kind of stuff come out of our own leaders over here, representatives over here. I think Joe Biden had some kind of I remember him saying something during a town hall in 2020 or 2021, did not want to go as far as condemning China, slavery, and everything else out over there because it was just a part of their culture. It's a cultural linchpin or something like. I remember it. Then, of course, we know what kind of business he and his family were doing, Biden. But then again, like I said before, and many times before, that this business that's being run, whether you are a head of state or whether you are a head of a church, which is the head of its own kind of a state, it's all mingling. And everybody does business with the same people. And there's a lot of kabuki theater out there. But at the same time, behind the scenes, a lot of people and their sons are doing business. And that's what I just didn't expect to see so much of China being mentioned around this time. And it's in line with a little bit more of what Leo Zagami has been saying as well. And there is this that there's this Chinese influence being felt at the conclave as well. Well, as you all know, Leo Zagami is a writer, a Vatican Insider. His research on the beliefs and practices of the global secret societies culminated with the publishing of the Confessions of the Illuminati series, whose 12th and final book is soon to be released. Leo is here with us today. Leo, how you been? It's been a while.
It's actually already released and it's already a bestseller, one of the best-selling books of my career, because it has been like literally assaulted. I mean, there is like a lot of talk about it. It's already #1 in the faith and spirituality chart, controversial religious knowledge, and also history essays, as well as historical and religious essays. This means that I have kind of hit the last nail on the coffin of Pope Francis with this book.
It's crazy.
I was hoping he would be still alive. I tell you the truth. I was hoping he would be still alive.
It's one of those things where I guess you couldn't miss. And the fact that this is the way that it worked out is crazy. First of all, Leo, is there any way that you can put the volume up on your microphone?
Sure. Here we are. Is it a little bit better now?
If you can give me a little bit more juice, that'd be awesome.
Okay, here is a little bit more juice. Can you hear me more?
Better. Can you make him how about you just bring the microphone closer to you? Would that be all right?
What I'm checking out here the levels, because the levels might be actually low on the microphone. So I have to kind of get back in. You want me to get back in and put it up?
No, I mean, it's all right. As long as you project your voice, you're not too low.
Here it should be much better now.
Nice.
That's okay.
Yes.
No, for some reason it was low, but that's not to do with my microphone. It's to do with this.
No, we're good now. But so perfect timing. I said, and you had written, I mean, you've written so many books at this point, but you have a bestseller, Pope Francis, The Last Pope. That was back in 2015, Leo.
That was my first book in the English language, and it was a bestseller. went very well, because I mean, it was it's a religious book after all. I mean, within the religious spectrum, it talks about the Vatican, but a lot of people understood that Pope Francis was no ordinary pope. He was a Jesuit, and he was, of course, very close to Freemasonry. He had received an endorsement by the mysterious Saint Gallen Mafia, and so I thought that with calling it also the last pope, there is a reason that goes beyond the prophecies of Malachi. It is about him that right from the start wanted to destroy the papacy. In fact, in my latest book, volume 12, which, as you said, is the last installment of my Confessions, where I go right up into the pyramid in the all-seeing eye, there where you have the Jesuit general, that's where I expose Francis and the Jesuits that last year have published a document in June of last year, where they are rediscussing altogether the very nature of the papacy, stating that it's going to be soon called only Bishop of Rome. That's it. Because you see, for many centuries, being the Pope and also the fact that the Church of Rome wanted to be the original, the number one Christian church in the world, was also based on this hypothetical thing of the papal supremacy, which was ushered in only 8 centuries ago. But before then, there was also the artificial construct behind the actual office of the Pope, which was based on an historian called Ignatius of Antioch. And now that they don't have any reason to keep this construct together, they actually admitting that it was all fake.
You know what? You bring this up here.
So it's not, Jesus, Peter, and then all the popes that go after. Nowadays, we have, of course, also another important element, the Vatican China deal, and all these bishops that were nominated by the Chinese Communist Party even recently.
We were just talking about that.
Something that we should also discuss.
We were just talking about that before we came on. That's what I set the table for. We have to discuss that, but before we get there, since you brought it up, you and I had discussed in the past Father Malachi Martin's work. We talked about exorcism. We did a few other things, but as a part of my first ever book club with this show, we read Windswept House. And of course, the whole plot within Windswept House is of this New World Order and deep church aspect that came together, very spiritually motivated, but also geopolitically motivated. And the whole plot was how to change permanently, from a political standpoint, the nature of the papacy, to get rid of the one person, to make it more of a Belgian New World Order, WEF kind of a tribunal. And of course, that didn't happen with John Paul II, who was being targeted, but they definitely made the next guy resign in the same way. So we're seeing this thing happen right now. And of course, you wrote in 2015 on Pope Francis. 10 years later, the night before the conclave, I guess I just got to ask you before we get into everything else, how do you see this going down over the next week?
Okay, first of all, I really felt the hand of God, because the Pope died when I was finishing writing the book right on the last day. So that was it. I had to then, quickly go back on the book and, of course, reassess the situation, as that's the moment in which we have already, in projection, a new Pope that is going to be in the image of Pope Francis, because, as I explain in this book, Pope Francis has elevated an enormous amount of cardinals. In fact, this year there is also in the conclave an enormous amount of cardinal electors. And out of all these cardinal electors, which are, I think, 133, 80%, which is approximately 108, were nominated by Pope Francis. Now, if you think that you need only 3/4 to reach the quorum so you can elect a Pope, Francis did all this so he could really make sure that the papacy was rigged in his name. And he did it up until the last month, where he was more active. In December, he elevated the last popes. And then in February, while he was about to go to the Gemelli Hospital, he actually signed the last documents, also encouraging the American bishops to wage war against Donald J. Trump. So, I mean, he was very much kept alive also until the arrival of J.D. Vance, because he was still promulgating acts and orders with his seal, with his ring, that were necessary for the transformation, future transformation of the church following the Vatican II. Now, you mentioned Malachi Martin. Malachi Martin was a Jesuit who worked with Cardinal Bea during the Second Vatican Council that took place in the first half of the 1960s. I mentioned him also in my new book, because you have to understand, in the last 40 years, maybe there is 3 books that made it into the bookshelves of people that talk about the Jesuits. One of them is Malachi Martin's Jesuits, which is a great book, a book which, of course, he was a Jesuit, he had been part of the Jesuits, but then he saw what the Jesuits were all about during the Second Vatican Council, and he walked out of all that, and he kind of became a more traditional priest, because after the Second Vatican Council, the Jesuits became more and more Marxist. That was what happened. So I have actually always here the book of Malachi Martin, because I find the Malachi Martin to be very important.
Yes.
However, after this book, there was another book of relevance, which was Rulers of Evil of Tupper Saucy, and then in the year 2000, the last book written about the Jesuits was Eric John Phelps' Vatican Assassins. I mean, can you imagine, in all these decades, nobody has written about the Jesuits because they're all scared. Every researcher is scared of exposing the Jesuits, and also because the Jesuits are the scientists of the church, they are the scholars of the church, but they are also, as Phelps said, the Vatican assassins. They are in charge of the Vatican intelligence. They are feared in both ways, both intellectually as well as being possibly whacked. So this is what the Jesuits are about. And when you talked about, of course, that book you mentioned, Malachi Martin, which was kind of covering under some fictional elements the truth, we are talking about, of course, a book that reveals some very disturbing secrets about the satanic element that emerged during the Second Vatican Council. And when you say World Economic Forum, let's not forget that in volume 7 of my Confessions, which I think we discussed in the past, I mentioned not only the Vatican-China deal, but I also mentioned the fact that the mentor of Klaus Schwab was from the Second Vatican Council. He had actually put together this pact of the catacombs with all these progressive cardinals and bishops from South America, which eventually manifested in what is known as liberation theology. Yeah. So all this distraction of the Catholic, the remains of Christianity within the Catholic faith, well, it was all sealed with the Second Vatican Council, where these two forces kind of came together, the Masonic force and the Jesuits. Now, things are very different, though, from the conclave, for example, that elected Cardinal Roncalli, taking away Syria at the last minute in 1958, simply because the CIA decided that he was too much of a traditionalist, and of course also the Freemasons wanted to implement their own values within the Second Vatican Council. Now, with Pope Francis, since 2013, since his election, money has been pouring non-stop from China, and I'm talking billions and billions a year. And for that reason, we can have only two possible candidates that win. Now, one is, of course, Cardinal Anton Luis Tagle. He is a Filipino-Chinese. He's very much an open supporter, as you can see simply by Googling, of the Vatican-China deal. And for those who don't know it, the Vatican-China deal is accepting the heresies of the Chinese Catholic Patriotic Church, which was established by Mao Zedong, not by Jesus or by Peter. So, I mean, we're talking here about full-on heresy, because in order to manifest a bishop or a priest, you have to have a valid episcopal consecration and lineage, which goes all the way back to hypothetically St. Peter's. St. Peter. So here we are with, of course, Vigano saying the same thing, which I stated also in my latest book. But in my latest book, I also reveal the nature of Nancy Pelosi as a fifth-class Jesuit who helped Theodore McCarry actively and also brought, you see, some important information to this very important figure, which I'm going to show you, which was one of the most important figures of the Chinese Patriotic Church. Is now no longer with us, but because Theodore McCarrick was already under heavy accusations and couldn't move, Nancy Pelosi, as a fifth-class Jesuit, when she went to China, she delivered a message on behalf of McCarrick. Now, this guy, who is the late Bishop Aloysius Jin Luxan of Shanghai, is a former Jesuit who then was arrested by Mao Zedong in the 50s and became instrumental in building the whole apparatus of the Communist Catholic Church, which is in itself an idea which is insane. But when you go and study, like I did, and of course this work is the last of the series, because people want to know who controls the Illuminati, who controls the Freemasons, who controls the think tanks, who controls this and that. Well, guys, there is only one order. It's called the Order of the Jesuits, the Company of Jesus, the Society of Jesus, and they have been operational since 1540. And of course, they were very important. Like you say, Bishop Aloysius Jin of Shanghai, formerly one of China's leading Jesuits, he then became one of the leading figures of the Catholic Patriotic Association. And Theodore McCarrick initially met him on behalf of the Bush administration, because it was also a matter of intelligence that was going on. But let's not forget, Theodore McCarrick was defrocked and he was a shameful individual, which I, of course, expose here also for his connections with Aleister Crowley, with the St. Gallen Mafia and everything else. But when he met this Aloysius there in China, he gave him the possibility to enter then all the seminaries of the Patriotic Church and have sex with all these young Chinese boys. I mean, disgusting. Disgusting. As disgusting is the Vatican-China deal, which never came into fruition, but came into fruition in 2018 and was updated and resealed every 2 years since then. So at one point, a lot of Catholics started to ask, but what's inside this deal? Can we know what's inside this deal? In reality, we know only one thing, that part of the deal is the acceptance from the Vatican of the bishops nominated by the Chinese Patriotic Church, with no, I repeat, legitimate lineage. Just now, in April, they have nominated 2. So they are continuing in their, and Pope, you see, when they started to align, John Paul II, the CIA told them to start accepting some of these bishops so they could create a stronger alliance with China and so on. Well, John Paul II accepted some of these bishops, and so did Ratzinger, but they both also accepted the underground church. When Pope Francis came in 2013, he started to not accept any longer the underground situation. The underground church was something that at that point was no longer useful. And so now, after 2018, all those Chinese who were instead aligned against the Chinese Communist Party with the underground church, against the Communist Party with the underground church, they found themselves persecuted. I mean, persecuted even by the Vatican, who used to be their supporter. So when people think, why are the Jesuits so linked with China? This is a relationship that goes back 500 years, which I explain here in my book. When, for example, Pope Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Pope Francis, was buried, he was buried in Santa Maria Maggiore, outside of the Vatican walls. And he was buried there because that church was very dear to certain Jesuit missionaries who went to China and brought the image of of this church, the Salus Populo Romani, this important image that was then carried to China, the copy, of course. But why? Because the Jesuits are in reality worshippers of the Mother Goddess, and of course the Basilica of Sainte Marie Maggiore, Sainte Marie Major, as we call it in English, is established on the relics of the Temple of Cybele, which was one of the great Mother Goddess, and instead the Collegium Romano, where the first missionaries that brought mathematics and astronomy to China in exchange for other things, of course, amongst those other things, the art of war of Sun Tzu, because they were the first ones to translate it, and many other treatises. But that happened from the Collegium Romanum. The Collegium Romanum was the second university established by the Jesuit order, and it was established on the ruins of the biggest temple in ancient Rome dedicated to Isis. And the mission, you see, that the Jesuits had was to counter the Reformation. In 1540, they got their order approved. After a number of years, they had come together in 1534 in France, in Montmartre, in Paris, where they were studying at the university. But before that, the founder, Ignazio Loyola, was actually persecuted and arrested many times by the Inquisition. So why did they accept the Jesuits? Because the Jesuits guaranteed with their constitution and with a specific vow, which is the fourth vow, a total obedience to the Pope. That total obedience is like 007 at the service of Her Majesty or His Majesty. In fact, the actual term 007 was coined by John Dee at the service of Elizabeth I, whose main enemy were the Jesuits, who wanted to kill her. And so she had to create a counterintelligence unit against the Jesuits, which was formed by what became the nucleus for one of the most important intelligence services in the world to this day, the MI5, MI6, SIS. So, as you see, the Jesuits are extremely influential. They tried, though, to have as a new mission education, because their plan was, of course, in a way, to substitute the Knights Templars, the vacuum that was created with the Knights Templars had been persecuted, the Knights Templar had been banned from the Vatican, and so they no longer existed. And the Vatican needed an order that was equally fierce and military in their approach, though the Jesuits were never really formally recognized as a military religious order, because they didn't go around with the swords.
Right.
They were much more insidious. They will poison you. They will kill you in many other ways. They might even kill you with a sword, but they will do it without being dressed as a priest. You see, when they arrived in Japan, and I think that Martin Scorsese's movie, you saw the movie The Silence?
No.
There is, I think, two movies that we can, you have a very important movie, which is Mission from 1986. And that is a propaganda stunt, because, of course, it's depicting the Jesuits in a positive light, no? And the same happens with also Martin Scorsese, who is himself a fifth-class Jesuit agent. So you see, the actual Jesuits who are themselves in some way silenced. It's not, sorry, I said dead silence. It's actually silence. Martin Scorsese's Silence is based on a book, but it tells us the story of these first Jesuits who arrive in Japan. And actually, the Jesuits in Japan didn't have the same success as in China, because they didn't really understood the system. They thought that the emperor was in charge of everything. In regard to that, they were wrong, because the shogun were in charge at that point. By the time they reached the shogun had already, though, had information from the British Secret Service, from England, from the Protestant, who said to the Japanese, beware, because these people will destroy your religion, destroy Japan, and take everything. And actually, it took 3 shoguns to ban the Jesuits from Japan. But the film in question is based on this Jesuit general, provincial superior, sorry, who went to Japan and tried to get close to the shogun and all the rest, but then he got arrested. Now, you will imagine that if a guy believes in Jesus, he would like to be suffering and sacrifices himself in the image of Jesus. Well, that's not the Jesuits. They couldn't care less. It took only a few hours, and the guy just changed and says, okay, I'm going to work for you. And that's, and he became actually another important Jesuit agent. But of course, formally they were kicked out of Japan until the Meiji emperor got them back into the fold after the end of the shoguns and everything else. There was a clear change in Japan. So when it comes to the Jesuits, we are talking about an order that has in Asia a very important base. So if now we want to see a new pope emerging, it has to be either for the Jesuits at least, and for the people who are going to vote this pope, starting from tomorrow, from the first scrutiny, which is at 5:30 in the afternoon local time, and then of course there's 2 scrutinies on the 8th. From what I know, they said that maybe maximum on the 9th we should have the Pope, maybe even on the evening of the 8th. It's going to be very fast.
Well, let me jump into and ask you something here, because you brought up John Paul II, you brought up Benedict. We already brought up Malachim Martin, but
John Paul II hated the Jesuits.
Well,
he wanted to commission them, and in fact, Malachim Martin talks. He is actually somebody who witnessed some of this, even if he was no longer in Rome. He understood the gravity of what was happening. Now, John Paul II, you see, he was born in a communist country. He understood that the Jesuits, after the Second Vatican Council, were going full-on leftist, full-on. They were becoming Marxist. Pedro Arrupe, who was the general, was pushing for an alliance also with Freemasonry, and so a lot of Jesuits became Freemasons, and it became like really dangerous the situation for John Paul II, who perceived it as a threat to his more conservative approach. So in the early 90s, he wanted to commission the Jesuits, and he had decided to do that, and suddenly, mysteriously, now we don't know if the CIA intervened, Pedro Arrupe felt sick. and at that point, he arrived in Rome, and the Pope was actually about to commission the order by nominating his own representative. Well, even John Paul II, with the support of the CIA, didn't manage to put the order under commission. And many decades later, Joseph Ratzinger will attempt to do the same thing. In this book, I have the testimony of Father Georg, the secretary of Ratzinger, who says that he was basically Tarcisio Bertone delivered the letter to the Jesuit general, and he wanted Ratzinger to put Bergoglio as a commissioner. That was the moment in which Bergoglio said, no, I don't want to betray the Jesuits and the Jesuit oath, and I would prefer to back off from this initiative. And then Ratzinger didn't commission the order. But that moment is very important in the career of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, because he had broke with the Jesuits in Argentina during the Dirty War in the 70s. He had been initiated himself in the P2 Lodge. He became a Freemason, and those Freemasons helped him, when he established himself as an auxiliary bishop, then bishop, and all the rest. They supported his career. But when there was this move by Ratzinger, that was when he went back under the good auspices of the Black Pope. And at that point, he had the support of the Black Pope, the St. Gallen Mafia, the Freemasons, and of course, Ratzinger didn't stand a chance at that point.
That's what I want you to talk about in particular, because that's a huge part of the story. We everybody in one way or another that's covering the story is also reflecting on the 12-year pontificate of Francis right now. But what is often forgotten is that the man he replaced, Benedict, who many consider the actual last pope, died just 2 years ago. That through 90% of Francis's time, Benedict was alive and doing fairly well. So what I wanted to ask you is what you have heard Because everybody's got a theory about Benedict's bizarre resignation. Because we hear about
I don't have theories. I have facts.
Go ahead.
I don't base my work on theories because otherwise my books will have no validity. This is a book that is #1 and has not been debunked in the charts concerning religion by the Jesuits. They will be there in a second to debunk anything that was. So I had to really go through extreme measures in 500 footnotes, citations, making sure everything was proven and reproven by credible sources. So my evidence is accurate 100%. Like I said in Pope Francis the Last Pope, my first book, the intervention was made by a mentor of Pope Francis, which was Cardinal Maria Martini, who was a member of the St. Gallen Mafia. In this book, the latest book, I actually explain how Ratzinger, what happened with the Ratzinger. He was monitored from the start of his papacy by his Jesuit controller, who was Father Federico Lombardi. He was not capable really of, Bergoglio was actually almost elected in 2005. Not almost. He had 25 votes. He could gather more, but he refused. And that's because he still was on the bad side of the Jesuit general. And he knew that he had way too many skeletons in the closet, including an illegitimate son, Tomasito. So what happened is he had all these skeletons in the closet, the 2 Jesuits that were kidnapped in Argentina. That was a situation that really got angered very much Father Pedro Arrupe, the Father General, and who kicked him out as a provincial father in 1978. So he got in trouble because of his stand with the conservative Freemasons in Argentina. He wanted to, like we said, go back into the good auspices. But in the meantime, Joseph Ratzinger was elected in 2005. And at that point, the St. Gallen Mafia, which is known, we call it the St. Gallen Mafia, some people call it the St. Gallen Lodge, was a group of high prelates, including Cardinal Maria Martini, which was an important Jesuit, by the way. And they were all meeting in Switzerland in a place where nowadays actually the European Conference of Bishops meets still to this day. But nowadays, the St. Gallen Mafia no longer exists. And I explained this morning to an Italian journalist who asked me this question. He said, why? Well, in 2014, this group of prelates had accomplished what they wanted. They had put Jorge Mario Bergoglio on the throne of St. Peter. From that moment onwards, the Jesuits had full control. There was no need of having another external group. The St. Gallen Mafia was basically working with the ultra-progressive leftist agents controlled by the Jesuits in bringing forward the most leftist values of Vatican II, because they accused the Vatican of not doing enough to implement those values. Think about one thing. Pope Francis, before dying, he said only half of Vatican II, of the values of the Second Vatican Council have been implemented, and there's still a lot of work to do. And already the church is half destroyed. But I mean, they want to destroy the whole thing because in the end, they want a one-world religion to emerge. Anyway, the St. Gallen Mafia members, there were various, including Daniels, who was the thinking core of these reformists, together with another guy called Lehman. These were people that either were Jesuits or either had studied with the Jesuits in Rome at the Lateranense, at the Pontifical Biblical Institute. And so it was basically the St. Gallen Mafia that had the possibility of convincing Ratzinger after gathering a lot of information on him. So in the summer of 2012, I still remember what happened because there was the gathering of the families in Milan. Joseph Ratzinger arrived there in Milan. And, of course, the Archbishop of Milan, Cardinal Maria Martini, he came, towards them to say, welcome. But in reality, and there is witness to this, he went there in front of Joseph Ratzinger, and he said, now it's time to resign. You have only a few months, and we're going to let hell loose on you. And so, you see, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger had always been very fearful of the Jesuits, and especially was fearful of the fact that many Jesuits had openly said that they were embracing Freemasonry. Ratzinger, when he was in the Congregation of the Martyrs of Faith, which is the modern Inquisition, had condemned openly Freemasonry. Ratzinger, though, had a lot of skeletons in the closet. And the skeletons in the closet, of course, could be used for blackmail. And one story was told to me that really brought him out of the whole equation. And it was when his car broke down, his Mercedes, in the middle of the night in Rome, and he was with a very young seminarian, too young. And at that point, he had to activate the satellite emergency to call the Vatican to get out of this mess because the car was not working. And you have like a special satellite thing, a device. They apparently, and when I remember when I wrote my book, I think it was, I was publishing my trilogy, and I included this story in my trilogy, and actually I said it openly in a conference in front of the headquarters of the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre in Palermo, which is an important place in Sicily, in the capital of Sicily, and they soon after Ratzinger resigned. I mean, he knew that too many people knew there was, and he, aside from him covering for pedophilia, he had actually been involved probably himself with acts that were contrary to the morals and ethics of a pope. He was way too close to that Father Georg, who many considered him to be his Georg Eschwin, his lover. Georg stayed for a couple of years with Pope Francis, but then when Pope Francis understood that he was relaying too much information to Joseph Ratzinger when he was Pope Emeritus, he gradually isolated him. Now, for example, Father Georg was sent, I don't know, I think in some foreign country in the Eastern Europe, I don't remember exactly where, but out of Rome. In regards, though, to what happened that with that resignation, I mean, it was like Benedict XVI was literally under siege by these forces. They were capable of blocking even financially the Vatican if he didn't accept this resignation. It wasn't just a resignation he decided lightly to give. I mean, no pope had resigned for so long that nobody even remembered the last time somebody had done this. So the St. Gallen Mafia, who was maybe more similar to a Masonic lodge than to a Christian institution, was established in the second half of the 90s in Switzerland by Carlo Maria Martini, who died on August 31st, 2012, but was also a Freemason. I mean, after he died, there was actually various Masonic obediences, including the Grand Oriente Democratico that greeted him as a brother. And so this guy was one of the main mentors of Pope Francis. But then another important mentor of Pope Francis, which I put here in my book, was somebody, unfortunately, from my family. And you can go on Wikipedia and you can see he was the teacher of Pope Francis, the late Carlos Aldunate Lyon. It says on his Wikipedia, he was the teacher of Pope Francis. He was the master of novices when Pope Francis was in Chile. My family has been for a couple of centuries in Chile. My grandfather was born in Chile. The Lyon family has a lot of important and influential people in Chile. And in fact, not only is not these two brothers were very influential. The other one was the provincial head of the Jesuits in Chile. And I included this personal thing because I felt almost, like it was important for me to bring out everything I know about these people, because it's a little bit karmic, My family had so much to do with the Jesuits on both sides of my family, and also with the Catholic Church for many centuries, that I thought it's important to finally bring out the truth. And so I went... I remember still I went to the headquarters of the Jesuits that is across the road from the headquarters of the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre in the beginning of 2014. And I said to them, I'm going to reveal everything that I know on you. Now, a Dominican came to me. There were present two people, which I talk also about in the book. One was a Jesuitess woman, because there's also women Jesuits, but they are from various non-orders, and this is also very important. And this Dominican came at the end, admitted, said, Leo, Well, if you tell only the truth 100%, even if it's gonna destroy us, even if it's gonna be bad for us, even if it's gonna make us shameful of who we are, we will accept it. So this book, which I waited so long to bring out at the end of my confession series, is based on this, on this promise I make, to bring only the truth, accurate truth, even if it means that a lot of people will have to do what in the Catholic Church is like mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, and bow down in shame. But this book reveals the truth. And that is important, the truth, because the truth can set us free.
But again, because I want to talk about the truth, and you even say it in your new book. I saw the chapter titles, and I thought it was really interesting about the Jesuits and whether or not they're losing control of the narrative. And it's thinking about where younger generations are moving to right now, whereas those who are in control are very old, very leftist. And you think about what Francis had to do, what he was on top of the climate change stuff and whatever. He was so at war with traditional Latin mass.
That's important what you said about climate change, because here in this book I explained the whole history of climate change from a Jesuit perspective. It started at the end of the 60s with the Padre Pedro Rupe. Nowadays there is even a site called Eco Jesuits. They are the ones behind all this false narrative.
Yeah, but to that point, this is something that is not being embraced by upcoming generations. So I just wonder. Sorry,
can I ask you what you mean with not embraced with the upcoming generation, with all these idiots in the college campuses going around brainwashed left, right, and center? I'm sorry, but they rule the narrative because they still are the ones controlling the educational system.
Oh yeah. But I'm talking about within the church. I'm talking about as far as people who are converting, who are going back to church. They're younger and they're a lot more conservative, and we've seen that.
You would like to see the traditional church.
Right. But
what you're meaning, you mean the kind of J.D. Vance of the situation who in August 2019 embraced Catholicism, or younger people who embrace it because they believe traditional Latin Mass is the future of the church? Well, let me break it to you guys. That is a minority, like those 100 priests that went to Mar-a-Lago, and that's it. The rest is all a bunch of progressive, queers, LGBT supporters like Father Martin, who founded Outreach, and all that rubbish. And the American Jesuit Review, who published Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in 2018 to present her to the political scene. That is the future of the church. And these elections that we are seeing starting tomorrow will prove it.
So what are they losing as far as narrative? What control are they losing? And
another narrative.
Who's the threat? Who's the threat to the narrative control?
Okay, the narrative that they are losing, of course, is towards the real Christians. When they start saying they don't believe in hell, they don't believe in Satan, they are basically becoming relativist. Relativism was supposed to be something they actually fought before.
Yeah.
Instead, now they are embracing it. So you see, they are, when I explain in this book how they study today in Jesuit colleges, I was actually shocked. They embrace AI study in the sense AI is encouraged, ChatGPT use is encouraged. I will never do something like that. The people are already, they don't know how to think, how to read a book, and you let them work with ChatGPT. I mean, are you demented? These people are, of course, being completely taken over by the cyber Satan. They think that they can do a positive use of cyber Satan. There is ways of using the AI that are actually constructive and can lead to positive things. You see, this is, of course, what we have today. We have a clash which is actually in the White House, represented by a former Jesuit student who rejected 2 secret societies on campus at Fordham, Donald J. Trump, and all the values they push. immigration, pushing millions of Catholics brainwashed by the Jesuits from Central and South America, pushed by the NGOs. Then they control the narrative of the media, they control the judges, they control the Freemasons that are so progressive, they make me puke these days in places like California. They control the whole thing about transgenderism. Do you know that in the Jesuit University of San Francisco, there is a transgender safe space?
I'm sure.
Ooh.
I'm sure, but to your point, you're saying that they're losing the narrative by embracing pluralism. I was just last night I was talking about what Francis said.
This is me studying with the Jesuits. It was the 80s, okay? And this is me, watch. Okay? You see me?
I do. Look at that head of hair.
And I love the head more. Well, I know what the Jesuits are about. And Trump knows what the Jesuits are about. But you only know what the Jesuits are about if you have studied with them. And if you manage to not get brainwashed by them, and if you reject them like I did or like Trump did, well, then you become their worst nightmare.
But Leo, when you publish the way that you do, and you say that if you cross the Jesuits, you get whacked, you do all this, what protects you in particular?
I had to flee Italy. I had to flee Italy. I had to change. I mean, I had to give up my Italian citizenship last year to not get persecuted. The Italian police still in the month of December was going to interrogate my mother. I mean, I am persecuted in Italy. I can't even go and visit my family.
So they're not allowed to come to the United States. Why are they afraid to come to the United States to hunt somebody down?
Okay, the United States, first of all, I'm in this great country thanks first of all, to a green card I obtained also because of my role as president of Italian for Trump and many other things I did during my career. And I did it all legally, and I followed the rules. And eventually last year I became American. And once I became American, my first thing was to formally renounce to the Italian and European citizenship, because like I explained here, the Jesuits founded the European Union together with the CIA and all that. And I have the evidence in this book. People like Joseph Ratzinger and others founded the Bilderberg, but also helped Count Kalergi.
Yep.
Otto Augsburg. These are Jesuit agents. So when you say, what do you renounce? First of all, I lost my son. I haven't seen him since 2008. The Jesuits took him. I talked about it in volume 10. Thomas Michel, the secretary of the Interreligious Affairs of the Jesuits, intervened. I was married with an Islamic woman at the time, and I never saw my son again, who now is raised by a member of the World Economic Forum. I even mentioned the name and everything in volume 10 of my confession. So what more can you do to me? You can kill me. Well, killing me is a little bit of a bad idea, because you have to understand that I was also a member of several secret societies. So I have buried my secrets across a wide range of people who are also influential, just as much as them. Maybe I don't have all the power they have, but that's why, I have no fear of being in Jesuit-driven California with Jesuit Governor Newsom, who studied with the Jesuits, and tell him to his face. Because you have to understand that when you arrive to a certain level, and you are at a certain level because of your bloodline, you are not scared. They have to be scared.
I remember you saying that before. Maybe like the first time we spoke together.
Yeah.
You said I'm not a peasant. I'm not some peasant. I
don't like it to be that way because I'm American.
No, I understand.
I spent an hour. Usually you get your citizenship after 15 minutes replying to the answer in automatic. I spent an hour and a half, and my wife was worried because they asked me everything about my family lineage, what titles I have, what lodges I went, and because I said, are we still in 1776? I said at one point, are you afraid because I'm a relative of the Queen of England, I have some aim to the, because they might ask me questions like this. I'm talking about the people who gave my citizenship. This was an official interrogation that is made when you receive it. Then after I answered all the questions and I said everything, they told me, well, will you sacrifice yourself for this country? I said, yes, I will do anything for this country. And they gave me my passport after.
And you remember I told you a couple of years ago, one of your family members is buried in a very old cemetery near me over here. I said, hey, does this check out with you? And yeah, so over here in the Westchester, New York area, there is some
family members that are a little bit controversial. Like, for example, that last preacher who gave that very fierce, I would like not to talk about that, but
you don't have to.
That it's about Martin Luther King, and he was a little bit too racist, the guy, so I don't want to mention him, but he was a Lion family member.
Well, you just mentioned 1776. I'm going to open up a big can of worms for you right now.
There is actually a bunch of Lion family members, aside from other family members, who have fought against the English, because, of course, you have to understand, like I explained in this book, the Jesuits had all the interests of fighting against their arch enemies, Great Britain, the Protestants. So when they were actually, do you know that two of the founding fathers were directly involved with the Jesuits, and one was actually a former Jesuit, the first Catholic bishop of the United States? The Carroll family donated the land in which the Capitol building in Washington is built.
That's John Carroll, you're right?
Yes.
Yeah. Here's what I wanted to bring up. It's all going to tie together. Yeah. So you brought up 1776. First thing I thought about is May 1st, 1776. It's a very big day in written history of the Illuminati. You cover it a lot, of course. It's revered.
I cover it also in this book because, of course, the Illuminati have a link with the Jesuits, which is in Ingolstadt, which was their bastion. There,
and that's what I want to get to. For modern day communists, it's May Day. So that's the day in 1776 when Adam Weishaupt established the Bavarian Illuminati. And of course, Weishaupt was raised a Jesuit. But there's also a lot of emphasis paid and placed on Weishaupt being born Jewish. So when you came
but there's also a lot of emphasis placed on the fact that maybe Ignazio Loyola was himself a conversus, but it doesn't change the fact that eventually they both worked for the Jesuits.
No, and that's what I'm talking about. I want you to explain this for me, because when you came on to talk about Sabbatean Frankism,
yes, absolutely. This is a very interesting point.
You mentioned how Frankists would publicly adopt Christianity in order to mask their more mystical Kabbalistic practices. In fact, I believe that Jacob Frank converted to Catholicism in Poland just less than 20.
And brought also 20,000 Jews to convert, and actually that was like his gift to the Catholic Church that then nobilitated him. So
and that happened only 20 years before Weishaupt established the Bavarian Illuminati. So my question is, naturally there are questions about who Weishaupt was really actually working for. What were the Jesuits in charge? Was it the Sabbatean Frankists? Is it both? What?
Okay, let's go back to the foundation of the Jesuits before we go back to the foundation of the Illuminati. Is that okay?
Sure.
Because otherwise, there's two things kind of. At the time of the foundation of the Jesuits, there were no Sabbatean Frankists, but there was the Erev Rav, and there were the Jewish heretics that had converted to what was known as the Alumbrados, the Illuminati of the time. And they practiced Jewish mysticism, Islamic mysticism, Gnosticism, and for that reason, the founder of the Jesuits, Ignazio Loyola, got in trouble with the Inquisition, which was led at the time by the Dominicans. Before, of course, they would be taken over after by the Jesuits. It was the Spanish Inquisition, one of the most fierce organizations in the history of mankind. And what happened was that, as you know, in Spain, there had been a strong Jewish population that was pushed into conversion. The conversos, the Marranos, the actual push towards this conversion was at time done with specific laws that, will forbid. So they were also kicking out the Islamic remnants from the peninsula there, from the Iberic Peninsula. So this was the kind of situation that led to the foundation of the Jesuits. In fact, we find the secretary Ignazio Loyola himself being a Jew. Now, we never found confirming evidence 100% that Ignazio Loyola himself had the Jewish blood, but it seems like he surrounded himself by a bunch of people who were. So after a few decades, when they were at that point in charge of the Inquisition and the laws prohibited there was specific laws in Spain and in Portugal, they renounced to have Jews within the Jesuits. But at the beginning, the very foundation was led by certain Jews. Now, those Jews, of course, if they became Jesuits, they were not Jews in the traditional sense. You understand? The Jew that stays Jew, it's one thing. The one that goes and does other things eventually becomes just like the Sabbateans with Shabbatize heavy, and later on Jacob Frank. So, but even before the Sabbatean Frankists came along, there was the Erev Rav, which was a nucleus of original Jews who came down from the moment Moses went out of Egypt, and apparently he brought with him also some magicians and some occultists that were practicing high priest there in Egypt with him, not only Jewish people. And those were the ones who then pushed for the worship of the golden calf. But having said that, Adam Weishaupt, his father died at a very young age, was of course brought up in this Jesuit stronghold of Ingolstadt, in this Jesuit college of Ingolstadt. And he ended up becoming the professor of canon law, which was usually exclusively of the Jesuits until their suppression. Let's not forget, at one point, the Jesuits started to really get on the nerves of everybody. They were banned from Portugal, from Spain, from France. Starting from the 1760s, they started to be persecuted because they were seen for what they really were. They were not priests. These people were like secret agents of they were doing things that were completely dangerous and antithetic to Christianity. So the persecution eventually arrived to a point in which the Vatican had to kick them out. And that was 1773. They arrested the Jesuit general, and they locked him up, Lorenzo Ricci, they locked him up in Castel Sant'Angelo. But that was, if you think about it, the moment in which we have also a very important situation going on, which is about to manifest in 1776, with also the United States of America. And Ricci might have been in Castel Sant'Angelo, but his power was not diminished, and he was still in control of a lot of things. Now, Weishaupt was a young student who understood that, who was very much into the Machiavellian use of pious frauds. What are pious frauds? Pious frauds is the technique the Jesuits do to fraudulently convince you of something, but the end justifies the mean. So pious frauds now are in any case, if they're used for good, they're justified. And Adam Weishaupt himself, who was brought up in this kind of situation, considered the use of pious frauds himself after when he founded the Illuminati. So the end sanctifies the means became very important for Weishaupt, and is of course something that puts together a little bit the Machiavelli and Ignazio Loyola. Now it was the Age of Enlightenment, and the suppression of the Jesuits led some people to think that Adam Weishaupt was actually against the Jesuits, because when he founded in 1776 the Illuminati, for all the various low ranks and everything, first of all, he said there was a Christian order, which was a lie. Second of all, he convinced all his Masonic allies, including Adolf Knigg, that, this was done against the Jesuits. But eventually, 4 years later, Adolf Knigg, who had been the left-hand man of Adam Weishaupt, went out of the Illuminati and accused openly Adam Weishaupt, saying, "You work for the Jesuits, you are a Jesuit agent." And that was when they exposed Adam Weishaupt, and then the Illuminati, of course, at that point got exposed and persecuted up to a certain extent, but of course then they remanifested in various ways. But there was actually a moment in which Weishaupt kind of pretended he was actually, he was taught by the Jesuits. Now, the university where he was, Ingolstadt, is a very important one, because Ignazio Loyola had sent 18 of his most trusted disciples in Ingolstadt a couple of centuries earlier to keep an eye and build a base for the Counter-Reformation. let's not forget how the Jesuit came into fruition. It was the new weapon of the Counter-Reformation. And they were losing ground with Martin Luther, with the English Church, and all the rest. So it was considered the most important base for the Counter-Reformation, and most of the professors were Jesuits, but not all of them. The headquarters of the Jesuits in Germany, until their suppression, was in Ingolstadt. So it was basically next to the university. So the Jesuit college and the headquarters of the Jesuits were one and the other kind of thing. And Weishaupt attended the Jesuit university thanks to his rich and influential godfather. Not his father had also taught there, but he died young. And he had, though, a godfather who raised him, who was Baron von Hickstadt, who was a major proponent of the Enlightenment in Bavaria, and who himself actually seemed to be quite opposing the Jesuits, at least because he was a major proponent of the Enlightenment, and people kind of saw the Enlightenment as being opening theism and opening to ideas that were contrary to organized religion. So Weishaupt's father died when Adam was only 5 years old. Then, of course, before becoming himself a professor, he went to this institution with the Jesuits. Weishaupt's first attempt, though, to put together this secret society was made in a way like you are putting together the classical fraternity in your campus, like we have many here in America. And by the way, in the Jesuit universities like Georgetown, like Fordham, you have a lot of secret societies established by the Jesuits. Actually, they are, and it's no secret. They actually openly say it in the history of the secret societies, like the ones who tried to enroll Donald J. Trump, like the Fordham Club, or there is another more secretive one that tried to enroll him. So Weishaupt, for this reason, wanted to imitate the Jesuit and took the grandiose title of general when he became Grand Master of the Illuminati. So he then imitated the constitution of the Jesuits line by line for his Illuminati order.
Oh.
So he was really very much into starting something which quickly branched out to Munich. And of course, the Jesuits were inspirational, but at the time, let's not forget that there was the suppression. So many of these Jesuits, some of them have gone under the protection of the Orthodox Church in Russia and the Empress of Russia. Others had also gone into disguise, like, for example, Father Augustin Baruel. Now, this name might, does it tell you something, Augustin Baruel? Because he's very important. He's the guy who wrote one of the first conspiracy theory books on the French Revolution. Well, he was a Jesuit, former, but all these former Jesuits that we have during the suppression, in reality, they were still Jesuits. Because once you take the fourth vow, you are a forever Jesuit. Let's not forget that the Jesuits have, and like I explained, various types. You have the Jesuits of the first three vows, so chastity, poverty, obedience, and then you have the fourth vow, which is the missions, total and complete obedience to the Pope. Then at that point you get enrolled into the Vatican Intelligence. And in the 1560s, they founded what was known as the Holy Alliance, which today is known as the Entity, which is the Vatican Intelligence. And the Jesuits played a key role in the Vatican Intelligence. Now, in regard to, like I said, Adam Weishaupt, he actually got a Jesuit, a Jesuit who then later on will become also secretary to a pope, to write his rituals. And this pope was actually Giovannangelo Braschi. And Giovannangelo Braschi, but from other things, gave the name to the school where I was. Giovannangelo Braschi was somebody who wanted to intervene during the suppression of the Jesuits to liberate the Jesuit general But when he decided, the Jesuit general died on his way to Borgo Santo Spirito, so they say. In any way, he didn't manage to get back the Jesuits in their place. It took a few more years. But this Habe Marotti became the guy who actually wrote the Masonic rituals of the Illuminati. So it's like Giuseppe Marotti, this Jesuit Habe guy, who became secretary of Pope Pius VI, was actually intervened by writing the rituals. We're not talking about, like a remote connection. It's the guy who wrote the rituals.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's deep. It's deep, and obviously we can talk about this for a few more hours. But I have,
we can talk about this for a few hours. But for example, the regions of White Ruthenia and Silesia, these are important regions nowadays. Part of these regions. Then we have, Silesia it was part with modern Poland. These parts were under the control of the Jesuits after the suppression, even. And it's that, so you see, there is also a very strong Jesuit connotation in the war between Ukraine and Russia. People don't know this, but during the Second World War, as I explain in my book, the SS had along with them Jesuits who were there to convert the Orthodox in their invasion, while they were invading Russia, the German SS. So the actual insidious nature of the Jesuits it's incredible. I mean, I don't think that people know not half of it, even this much of it.
Well, that's why they have to go read the book. And now let me ask you one last question before I let you say your closing statements and we take the night off until the next time you come back. I can't wait for it because I have a whole new set of questions now. But because you were talking about the Jesuits, obviously we're talking about modern day, but also back in the day and them replacing the Order of the Templars and all that. It made me remember one thing that was going around the internet around 2015, 2016, when it was becoming clear that Donald Trump was going to become the front runner, and then of course he was going to become president. It was just started becoming clear that this was just the way things were going to go, and everybody was going to be shocked. But there was a lot of rumors that he was being protected by an inner sanctum of Templars, and I don't know if that was just
It's true.
It's because there's never any public attention paid to that. It was.
If you want, I can give you a little bit of information. I'm not going to disclose 100% of it, but I can actually. I think because time has gone, I can disclose a little bit of it.
Okay.
Now, it wasn't only the Knights Templar, it was also the Knights of Malta. And for that reason, like I explained in my latest book, eventually the Knights of Malta got the revenge of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, who commissioned the Knights of Malta and eventually changed their constitution and overturned the whole thing and took over the order in 2022. That's why when J.D. Vance on the Friday Mass of Easter passed in front of the Knights of Malta, they all watched him very bad, because now there is no longer that conservative unit within the Knights of Malta, which was also connected to Freemasonry and also connected to that organization that I helped establishing with other people who were involved with this whole process, Freemason and Knights of Malta, which was known as the Italians for Trump, Trampiani d'Italia, which was the only organization outside of the United States to support not only the candidacy of Donald J. Trump, but to support them from the primaries onwards. So there was, at the time, the idea between certain parts of Freemasonry, and they were actually, a good, but it wasn't the majority. So in the end, we ended up failing, I think, because these organizations, these structures, especially Freemasonry, but also the Knights of Malta, were too much under their control of the Jesuits, and in the end, of course, they had the better, let's say, of the situation. Though it's true what you said, because there was the support of Neo-Templars and Freemasons, also from groups like in the Principality of Monaco in Europe, groups like the one I headed in Italy with the strict Templar observance, and many others I could, and also here in the United States, within even the ancient and asserted Scottish Rite that today unfortunately seems to be under a majority of progressive forces. So
Yeah.
yes, you are correct in your assertion.
Okay, and as far as, I guess, just to tack on one last question, there is, as far as your assessment of right now, everybody's been talking about, just last night we did as well, first 100 days of Trump. What's it been like? Where's it going to go? What is your, from your points of interest and how you assess geopolitics and the spirit world and everything like that, and then of course hidden powers of control? What's your assessment of Donald Trump right now and where it's going? Are you excited about this? Do you think it's just business as usual? What is it?
Okay, the first presidency unfortunately ended the way it did because they infiltrated him left, right, and center, and he didn't stand a chance as he was a newbie in the political world. And like I said, he had the support of certain branches of Freemasons, of Knights and stuff who really actively, really believed in him. But in the end, of course, then we know what happened in 2020. Now it's a different ballgame. Now it's a different ballgame in which he's projecting all his plans that go, of course, opposite to all the Jesuits. I mean, the Jesuits are pushed for immigration policies and immigration reform and all that rubbish, and they try to still flood the country, and they still try to block Trump. So the problem here is, will Trump be able to manage the warfare from the judiciary, which is under Jesuit control? Question mark. Will he manage to fight the educational system, which is under Jesuit control, even when not formally, like Harvard, for example, but many other institutions? This is really the question. I mean, will he be able to convince the Americans that you have to have patience if you are fighting with the tariff China, which, as I stated in my book, is a creation. Shanghai was a creation of the Jesuits. I mean, there's a long story for Shanghai to become this immense base and port of globalization. And the neocons are also part of the problems, as many others also, who unfortunately still have the ear of the president. So he's doing the right things, but of course, it's not an easy task what he's doing. I mean, he's fighting these people who have under their control the educational system, the media, everything. But he's doing the right thing. I mean, even when he says 100% tariff on foreign films, that is something good. That is actually something good.
I'm with you with the tariff stuff. I've been totally open to it. I traditionally don't like tariffs. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When you look at the war zones in Ukraine or
the war thing, and I tell you the truth.
But wait, let me just ask the question first. Ukraine, Israel, that's all Jesuit control? Or the Jesuits, that Israel and Palestine, even that is Jesuit?
Unfortunately, and that is not only me saying it, but actually there was a great Jewish researcher many years ago who used to put together all the dots about the Jesuit influence in Israel. He's no longer with us. But I tell you, the problem here is that Trump said, we can terminate this war in 24 hours. But in reality, I think what is missing here is Trump's understanding that this is a religious war. It's not only a political war. What they are doing against the Russian, the Orthodox Church in Ukraine for many years, parallel to what happened from 2014 after the annexation of Crimea, but also with their dignity, revolution, Maidan, all that rubbish. It's also a religious war, though, against the Orthodox Church under Kirill, which is the only church in the world at the moment that opposes the unification of all Christians for the one world religion that is coming. The fact that I said earlier, they want to eliminate the papal supremacy and the actual office of the Pope in the next with the next Pope is because by stepping down, they will be able to get every single Christian denomination all together. And that's the plan of the Jesuits and the Freemasons for the new religion that then will merge everything in it and will become the religion of the Antichrist. So I think that it's very difficult here, the situation in regards to these wars, because there is unfortunately no interest to stop, but it's also because there is a refusal, a complete refusal by Russia to stand along with, yes, he had nice words, like diplomatically, you can have nice words for the Pope, you can have nice words like Kirill had, but in reality, there is a war going on. I mean, the fact that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church switched their allegiance in 2018 from Moscow to the Constantinople, that is a big thing. It's not a small thing. And then we have the only meeting of Pope Francis and Kirill, which was where? In communist Jesuit Cuba, out of all places, with the communist Jesuit agents Raúl Castro and Fidel Castro. So I think that at the moment, when it comes down to the wars, I'm very glad that Trump has sorted out the rare earth deal. At least we can recover the money that was wasted by the Biden administration. But unfortunately, Zelensky is fomented by a machine that in Europe is constructed by the Jesuits that doesn't want any peace. That's the truth.
Well, okay. So then again, I have to ask the question, because what you're proposing tonight, and I'm not denying Jesuit influence and for however long they've been at it, hundreds of years now, but to say that they are the supreme and there's no other.
Okay, for example, the Masonic order which controls Poland and Ukraine, that the Russians, actually the politicians close to Russia wanted to kick out of Ukraine before they were kicked out, is the International Order of Saint Stanislaw. This order that depends directly, it's a Catholic order and is controlled by the Jesuits and the Vatican, is a Masonic knighthood order which puts together the British intelligence, Poland and Ukraine. Do I have to add anything else? Because their symbol is the symbol of the Ukrainian armed forces.
So then move from Ukraine and go to, say, Israel, Iran, or over there, because we brought up Sabbatean Frankism before. That's more of a mystic thing, but when it comes to
Sabbatean Frankists, they will not exist if these days if they didn't have the support of the Jesuits. I mean, they are in control of the banking system still, but the Jesuits are eventually in control of their spirituality, between brackets, whatever that spirituality is.
Right, but on a more secular level, when you talk about Zionism, for example, there are more tangible goals there. Like
Labor Zionism is controlled by the Jesuits, and so this is not.
That's a subset. You're saying that it goes Jesuits, Zionism, and then it just all branches out from Jesuits at the top.
Yes, that is, you see, the only thing they didn't want to touch was banking. And that's why they left it ultimately to the Sabbateans and the Sabbatean Frankists, to the banking thing. And that's where the Rothschild emerged.
Interesting.
But, aside from that, the Jesuits are, of course, in complete control. And that's why there is a lot of talk about Pizzaballa, even if he's a Franciscan, because he's there in Jerusalem and has done a lot of work for the Jesuits. But in regards to the Sabbatean Frankists, you know what I wrote in volume 10, I explain how the protocols of the Sages of Zion should be called the protocols of the Sabbatean Sages of Zion, to have a correct interpretation. But in reality, the Jesuits were very much influential in anti-Semitic narratives. And today, and you know this, my friend, you know, so much anti-Semitism in so-called conspiracy circles, with conspiracies that inevitably always blame the Jews. And this is totally incorrect, because, I mean, you can blame a political party, a religion, a sect, but you can't blame a race. And so this narrative, though, was very much pushed by the Jesuits. The Jesuits had a publication from the 1850s in Italy called Civiltà Cattolica, which led to the basis of the narrative that would be picked up later on by the protocols and also by Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler admired the Jesuits. Himmler admired the Jesuits. These people admire the Jesuits when in reality, a lot of other leaders for 2 centuries prior to that had always criticized the Jesuits as a very much a danger that we should be afraid of. Instead, Adolf Hitler embraced the whole thing. So when we are talking about anti-Semitism, when we are talking about the Holocaust, do you know that there was a direct, today, of course, officially, the Jesuits would say, oh, we always were for the Jews. Yes, sure. And then you have them with the rat lines and the Knights of Malta leaving, the Nazis escaping and going to South America. Come on, man. I mean, the Jesuits are the scumbags of the planet. Where did the former Nazis ended up? Question mark. In Jesuit territories. So there's nothing else to add. I mean, it's as clear as the light of day that the Jesuits are behind a lot also of what we have seen portrayed as always blaming the Jews. The Jews, of course, there is certain Jews that have to blame. And we have always talked about it, me and you on our show, no?
Yeah.
The Frankists, because they are an heresy that doesn't reflect the real Judaism. But the problem here is why blaming a whole race? And what interest, why do we have thousands, I repeat, thousands of books blaming a world Jewish conspiracy, and there is only 4 books in the last 40 years about the Jesuits?
You're making the point. I mean, there's a lot of one, and just honestly, aside from you and Malachi Martin, I haven't looked. So I also just don't know what's in the marketplace, but I'll take your word for it at this point.
No, I'm talking to you from an expert point of view.
Right.
In the English language, from the 80s till now, there has been written, I think, I said Tapper Society, Malachi Martin, and Eric John Phelps. These are 3 books. So 3 books. Go. I mean, and all the other books against the Jesuits, there is other books. So they were published maybe decades and decades before. After the Second World War, maybe a couple of relevant ones, but all the others in the at the beginning of the 19th century or during the 19th century or earlier on, even in the 18th century, because soon after the Jesuits appeared, we can say that books denouncing them appeared, like Monita Segreta. So there has always been at the time a narrative that blamed the Jesuits, but they were, by taking control of the educational system, they were capable of moving their narrative, just like they were capable of controlling the conspirational narrative, because Agustin Baruel, who wrote one of the first conspiracy books that blamed the Freemasons and the Illuminati for the French Revolution, at the end he himself blamed also the Jews. He never mentioned the Jesuits. But when there was a member of the Illuminati, who I talk about in my book, who actually exposes the link of the Jesuits, well, he was immediately casted out and denounced by Adam Weishaupt and his followers as a danger. And I'm not talking about Adolf Knigge. There was also other people who saw the danger that the Jesuits were. But I mean, the problem here is that they are way too powerful. They don't. When you control the educational system, you are literally brainwashes millions of people. You are controlling the academic world. As a professor, an history, I make an example, as an history professor, who is going to have the courage to write a book against the Jesuits, knowing that after he publishes that book, he will never teach again in any university in the world? So, I mean, this is the truth.
It's a big claim, and you make big claims, and you do it very well. I love, I don't have all 12 books, but I'm going to buy them all. I'm going to make sure that I have a special. You know what? I actually might put them right here down here on my special bookshelf in the studio. Leo Zagami's Confessions of an Illuminati. This is the 12th and final. Are you?
I want to give you two names that mention the Jesuits in the Jewish world that might be of interest for you also to study. Rabbi Antelman, and then my late friend Barry Kamish. I don't know if you remember Barry Kamish.
I don't.
Barry Kamish, you can find maybe still a book online that you should get because he was a guy who fought for the IDF. He was Jewish, he lived in Israel, and who knew the nature of the Jesuit infiltration in Israel like nobody else. I mean, we used to do back in the days of GCN, of Republic Broadcasting Network, with Greg Zismansky, a lot of shows with Barry. Now he's no longer with us. His body was, thanks God, brought back to Israel after he died. But he was courageous enough to expose those people in Israel which had these ties. So I think it's because of the discussion we had today, it would be good for you to study Barry Kamish.
Well, I think next time you come on, I got to put together a couple more questions I have just about the Jesuits and the founding of Israel. Because that of course that goes by way of England as well, which is
but it goes also via Switzerland. Don't forget.
Okay,
like the Mafia St. Gallen, it always goes through Switzerland. And let's not forget the symbol of Switzerland. And let's not forget that the last Neo-Templars, then the rectified Scottish Rite, took refuge. The strict Templar observance, when he was persecuted, they took refuge in Switzerland. Switzerland is or not the place of the bankers? It's a place that the banking is a religion. And why you think that? Because still to this day, the Grand Lodge Alpina is actually the most, they have, other kinds of Freemasonry. They follow rites which are non-Christian in nature, like the ancient Antiseptic Scottish Rite, which was reformed and purge of Jesuit elements by Albert Pike, and other rites but they all have some Jesuit elements still in them. But in Switzerland, they follow the rectified Scottish Rite. It is the most Jesuit rite of Freemasonry ever. You have to do the sign of the cross when you go into the lodge. I mean, we're talking here about stuff that Freemasons here in America would be like, what? They will be shocked in seeing those things that happened in those lodges. So I think that it's important that people understand that Freemasonry at times has been very varied in its in the way it operated. It's not always been a unified, monotonous kind of thing. But unfortunately, to this day, we can say that those forms of Freemasonry which were anti-Jesuit, like, for example, the Grand Lodge of England, which gives also the recognition for the regularity to all the lodges in the world, well, it has capitulated since the Second World War to the Jesuits, and nowadays is as progressive as the Grand Orient of France. And the Grand Orient of France of Emmanuel Macron is a Jesuit stronghold. And I don't know if you remember the infamous tales of Leo Taxil, who built upon this anti-Masonic thing a series of books, and he was even received by the Pope. But in reality, then he admitted after 12 years in front of the Freemasons and the church, that he made everything up. In reality, he was a Jesuit agent, a Jesuit seminarian who had been instructed to do so, to bring bad reputation to both Freemasonry and the church of the time that was regarded as too strict. So there is always been the intention also of making the Catholic Church more and more progressive, more and more relative. And now, of course, we're going to see either an African Pope, or either we're going to see a Chinese Filipino Pope. And it's not because of the color of the skin, but it is because, of course, Africa is a very important continent for China. China wants to be in control of the Vatican, so it's either going to be, like I said, an African cardinal or the Chinese Filipino Antonio Luis Tagle, which, by the way, has studied with the Jesuits and worked with the Jesuits.
Well, that and more, Leo Zagami, leozagami.com. I can't wait to bring you back. We should probably do something in the middle of the summer, too, after this all works out. We can start seeing what the new crew that's taking control of Vatican City is up to. We should definitely do.
It's gonna be shocking when in a couple of days you're gonna have, a Bemus Papam, and suddenly you have either an African or a Chinese Filipino coming out of the thing. It's gonna be shocking for a lot of people, but also it's gonna be the continuation of the work of Pope Francis. And I'm not saying it's a matter of race. Because, for example, when it comes to the African cardinals, they have a lot of problems in finding the right African cardinal because most of them are conservatives in Africa. But then you have also, of course, the exceptions. And those exceptions should be monitored because maybe like Cardinal Turkson or others, they have what it takes to become the next woke pope in the Vatican. But there is a testimony of Cardinal Antonio Luis Tagle on the internet, which I invite you to see, from 6 years ago, when he was interviewed as the possible future pope, in which he admits that he was brought into the priesthood by being tricked by a Jesuit. He actually wanted to become a doctor. He said, I want to become a doctor. Yeah, don't worry, go to this University of Jesuit. Then he found that he was signing his life off, and suddenly he said, vocation? What is this? And then the Jesuit said, I wanted to break your mindset. I think they also broke something else of him because he's way too friendly with the LGBT community. But I don't want to add anything else.
No. We can talk. We can talk about all the broken things next time. I can't wait. It's never a long enough show when you're on, Leo. Thank you so much. I hope people go out. They can get all the books on Amazon. What's the best place to get them?
Okay, you can get them, of course, on Amazon. You can go on leozagami.com and find all the links. This book can be read also without reading the other ones because it's a book on its own, but it's, of course, a book. You can also start the whole adventure in the Illuminati Confessions because if you want to start from the top rather than the bottom, you go with this one. And I'm sure you're going to also finally understand the way this conclave is working in a completely different way. I mean, you're going to have an awareness that your friends, even Catholics who have been in the church or studied for many years with the Jesuits, don't have. So I suggest to purchase this book, which is The History, Secret Societies, and the Politics of the Jesuit New World Order and their Luciferian court, made up of Freemasons, Illuminati, think tanks. I started this book with an introduction in which I find myself with friends of Cardinal Parolin, who are the Academy of the Illuminati in Rome, which during the promotion of Angel and Demons, we were invited by the Jesuit general in his offices in Borgo Santo Spirito. And this is just the introduction. So,
well, I hope one day, if I can do anything one day in Europe, because I've never been there before, I would love to sneak into Vatican City with you and with Timothy Alberino, and we can get lost in some crazy goose chase.
You know, the last time I sneaked Timothy Alberino into the Jesuit headquarters, he went back to America and he was poisoned. So I don't know if he wants to repeat the experience.
Shit. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't want any of that stuff. I hate it. I hate.
No. I mean, he claims that after he came back to America, they attempted on his life. There was an attempted murder on his life. I don't know how that worked out, but I think that in the end, he did a great job with the documentary, which eventually had also that part. I mean, it was a miracle. We managed with Timothy to get into the Jesuit headquarters and film. And it was all done because I managed to trick the guy at the entrance. But it's too much of a long story. I will tell you another time.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even like getting a head cold these days. So being poisoned, that's not something I want to do. But
I think that, we need to be very aware of things. And if you are aware of things, you have to keep a high guard, especially when you are starting to expose these people.
Yeah.
Until you have your stuff published, you should never even mention it. Now, we are doing a show which is live. Okay, imagine if we did these things and prepared them for a DVD that had to be published on a specific date and you already announced it. That's a very bad idea, because these things have to be done in a way, like I did my book, that they find it on the shelves and they say, and they can't fight it at that point.
Right.
Because otherwise they will try to stop you in every way possible,
Yeah.
and it could be a risk. So we're doing the right thing here. Just keep it alive.
Yeah, that's it. Keep it live. Well, this is like maybe the 5th or 6th time you've been on. I'm looking forward to more. Leo Zagami, have a wonderful night, my friend.
All the best, my friend. Take care. And of course, tomorrow or the day after, Habemus Papam.
Oh, there we go. It all begins. All right. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right. Hey, we got some overtime tonight. We got some overtime. We got some bonus. Then again, that just comes with the territory. You're always going to get bonus time with Leo Zagami. I love talking to him. I'm sure you guys do too. Let me take a really quick pause right here because we only have 15 minutes left, and I want to show you what's going on with this other guy, this black beanie wearing Pope. I'm not talking about Tim Pool. I'm taking a moment just to let you guys know that if you want access to tons of behind-the-scenes content, like the behind-the-scenes Sunday streams, there's the film and the book clubs. We're going to be watching and actually talking about The Prestige, Christopher Nolan's The Prestige. That's going to be a public film club on May 19th. But all that other stuff, usually the books and the film clubs are private, and it's just, the sponsors of the show. Consider becoming a sponsor on Patreon and Subscribestar or directly through the sponsor page on quitefrankly.tv. There's a lot of great stuff there. It helps keep this show independent as well as allows us to plan for the future. And everybody's getting coffee and keto brains and all types of stuff for the rest of the month of May. So I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you so much. The links are in the description below or on the sponsor page on quitefrankly.tv. Now back to the show. Let's get to your super chats. Jay Britz says, I could listen to Leo Zagami all night. Great show, Frank. Well, thank you. I'm glad you liked it. Let's see here. Leasebreaker says, let's see here. Matt's not gay anymore. He's not gay anymore. He should be here getting... I'll save that one for Friday night. It's too much. It's too much of a Jesuit thing to say. Actually, this is too much of a Sabbatean Frankist thing to say. Let me see here. Over here on Rumble, let's see what Rumble's got for us. Jay Semo says, great show. You asked excellent questions to make him clarify what he was saying about the Jesuits, but God help us. Yeah. Jay Semo again, great show. I could have listened for another hour. I wish I had another hour to give. Thank you. Over on YouTube, there's no super chats, but you still have time to send a few. It's right there. It's the $ button right there at the bottom of the text field, and let me know. A shout out, a thought, a joke. Smart Poker says, good evening, Franklys. Safety Net says, Tuesday greetings, Frank and the Frankly family. That's from Lynn. NX17 says, Leo is a brilliant and articulate intellectual treasure. Fabulous guest. Thank you, Frank. Then there's Ginger, Sean Joe, Porpoiseful, Hogleg71, and Texas Lil Red over on quitefrankly.tv, powered by Pilled. All right. I got to put this one on the schedule because we're talking about popes. This guy claims that he is the one true pope. And he's not even just talking to Christians, to Catholics. He's talking to everybody. Muslims, whoever the hell you are, come follow him. And the crazy thing is that this cult leader started out as a documentary filmmaker exposing cults, who now leads one. So let's talk about this guy for a little bit. You see this? There he is with the black beanie. That is his. That's his yarmulke. That's everything right there. Now his name is Abdullah Hashim Abba al-Sadiq, the leader of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. And he has been associated with claims of being the one true pope and the legitimate successor to Jesus Christ, Simon Peter, which is ridiculous because Simon's not a successor to Christ, And the Prophet Muhammad, I mean, he's covering the gamut here. He's covering the gamut. It's all here. And I've been reading about, here's a little bit of the liner notes. This is from gurumag.com. The leader of a doomsday cult in Crewe, England, called the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, claims we are hours away from a flood of blood. Well, I mean, it's England. The Messiah lives with over 200 followers and tells them to sell their homes and follow him. They refer to him as Master. Abdullah Hashem claims to be the long-awaited savior of mankind who has performed miracles such as resurrecting people from the dead. I have some of these the claims over here. I'll show you a way to kill him with no one knowing about it, Hashem told a follower whom he asked to kill someone. The text messages are out there. According to several former members, Hashem has sex with women in the group and coerces them into sexual acts. He also arranges marriages, which I did not. I found this particular article today, and I already knew all this stuff. Because what I did know about this guy, and I want to let you listen to him speak, was that he is a documentary filmmaker. And that he got together with this other guy with the Ahmadi religion of peace. Their past reveals, let's see here, Hashem and this guy McGowan. Okay? Indiana University. They wrote and directed a 50-minute comedy movie called Apache Tears. It played at a local regional cinemas. But they started going into the Raelian UFO cults and all that stuff, and they have been just covering cults. And what do you know? This guy went and bought himself a black beanie, and he started one of his own. And I want you to listen to the claims in front of his congregation here. I don't know, there might be a couple hundred people in this room, but take a listen.
And Ali alayhim as-salam. And in the will of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is written the first three successors.
You can see why this is has found a welcome home in England, right?
Of Imam al-Mahdi are Abdullah, Ahmad, and al-Mahdi. I am Abdullah, the successor of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, the successor of the Comforter Ahmad, the successor of Simon Peter, the successor of Muhammad, the successor of Jesus Christ. I am the true.
He's a crazy heretic. Crazy. But he's hitting everybody. So he's nuts. But these people are sitting there rapt attention.
Legitimate Pope. I am the proof upon the Christians. I am the son of the Muslims through my father, and the son of the Christians and the Jews through my mother. I am the son of the East through my father, and the son of the West through my mother. I am like Zulkarnain, who with one horn in the East and one in the West. And I am the inheritor of all that lies between. I am more knowledgeable than any false pope, and I am appointed by name in the will of the prophets. My name is also on the tongue of Isaiah, who prophesied of the righteous servant. And
it's okay. And then over here at around 10:30, he says, "Oh, he went on to say he's not the Antichrist. He just wanted to let everybody know that."
Christians in the East and the West. And Christians in the East and the West, hear me and obey. I am a messenger sent to you from Jesus Christ, alayhi salam. Paul is false and led you astray. The church is corrupt and no longer upholds the law of God, nor does it defend the oppressed. The papacy has been stolen and the rightful heir has been pushed aside. There is no one else but me that you are obliged to obey. May God be a witness that I have proclaimed.
Okay. So, I mean, this has been going on. This has been, going around for a couple of weeks now. It's like I said, I couldn't find a good place to put it in. Here he is over here giving out certificates of citizenship for, I don't know, but Brandon Williams better take note of this. I don't know why the audio is messed up on this again. It always happens that way. Hold on, here. I'll just go right to the Instagram. Right.
Now, if you're interested, please line up as we bring forward this table and we're going to hand out your certificates of citizenship on this.
Thank you. Thank you for my citizenship. I don't know what's going on. So he's making all these claims and shit like that. Part of a documentary called, I'll tell you, dude, and dudettes. He was doing his research with this Israeli cult shit, and if this doesn't get a 4-part Netflix documentary, when this completely implodes, I will be shocked and actually a little bit upset. I want to watch the documentary. I want to get into this. I really hope that this is all a ruse for a documentary on Netflix. I'm just shocked because it's Jim Jones, it's Twin Flames, it's Amway, Pampered Chef, and Avon all rolled into one. And you didn't have to tell me that he was having sex with all the women there. I'm saying to myself, when I saw this pop up, the first time I said, what is this? A friend of mine had sent it to me 2 weeks ago. I'm just looking at, I don't know, he kind of looks like Russell Brand meets Tim Pool, and I don't know, the performative aspect of all the stuff. It's obviously a cult. It's, whatever. You can tell that he went and he took notes and he's putting them to use. I'm saying there's no way that this guy isn't having sex with everyone in this organization. There's no way. And then I read that some early escapees have testified about things like arranged marriages and that he's making everybody do sexual things with him and all that shit. It always happens that way. It always does. Here's a 1-minute video of the claims of miracles. They got people to claim that this guy has performed miracles. It even as notable as raising people from the dead. Yes, you heard it.
We found the riser of the family of Muhammad, Abba Sadiq, and this is what we saw.
I saw actual angels fly across the skies to testify for him.
I saw prophetic dreams where he revealed secrets that later came true.
I witnessed and experienced his prophecy of my son's impossible birth coming true.
I witnessed him use me as a vessel to bring my dad back to life.
What does that mean? I'm sure he was used as a vessel, but bring my dad back to life?
I saw him cure me of an illness that the doctors couldn't cure.
I saw him sustain countless people, like Jesus did, for many years.
I witnessed he made the moon disappear.
He made the moon disappear. Okay? Russell Poole made the moon disappear.
I saw him have power over the jinn like Solomon.
So he had power over the jinn like King Solomon. He had power to cast out devils, demons.
मैंने उनको अपने कैंसर और दिल की बीमारी को हटाते हुए देखा.
She was cured of all fatal illnesses.
I witnessed him manifest a person out of nowhere.
He manifested a person out of nowhere. I what does that mean? God needed a rib. God at least needed a rib. This is out of nowhere.
I saw him resurrect my wife from the dead.
This guy's wife was dead, and she was resurrected. I'm laughing. But it's disturbing as much as it is funny to me because these people, they could just be paid cast and crew, obviously. But we have seen this kind of thing end in tragedy how many times in human history that it also could just very well be that these people are absolutely lost and desperate for something.
I witnessed him cure me from my infertility.
I saw him turn leaves
Did you hear that? She was infertile, and then he made her fertile. So he dumped at least a couple of big loads into her.
into living animals.
He turned leaves into living animals. He took a maple leaf and just a pigeon. Man, oh man. They're all, and they're not only in England. They're not only in England. The global headquarters is in Crewe. It's in near Manchester, United Kingdom. They have a converted Victoria era orphanage, which serves as its universal headquarters. This site includes a basilica for religious services and a statue of Ahmed al-Hassan, the movement's founder. There is also AROPL is registered as a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization with church status in Reno, Nevada. And man, I you know what I should do? I should make, quite frankly, I should register it as a church and not pay taxes anymore. That's what I should do. Hold on, let's see if there's any more of these miracles. There might be one miracle left. I mean, how can you top these?
For him, make every living minute of our lives with God a miracle.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that was stupid. That was stupid. But you know, there is a little bit of wisdom from Creed Bratton. I want to leave with you from The Office. Everybody remember Creed? His thoughts on being a cult leader versus a cult follower?
I'm a Lutheran and Bob is a Unitarian. It keeps things spicy. That's why we're cursed.
I've been involved in a number of cults, both as a leader and a follower. You have more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader.
That's it. Have a little bit more fun. A little bit more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader. I don't know. This guy seems like he's having his cake and eating it too. And it's nuts. Crown Weaver just said this guy's a crackpot. It would be better if he had a J hanging from his lips. My God says worship none other than the one true God, not worship of some crackpot Abdullah. Yeah, I mean it's everybody. Say, listen, whoever you are, his mother is Christian and Jewish. I don't know how that happens. His father is Muslim, therefore he has been congealed. Everything has congealed him into what he is. And now you follow. Renee says, much love and appreciation to Frank, Nikki, and the whole family. Thank you. Proud viewer for years. Oh, well, Renee Jr., thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's from YouTube. All right. Well, with that being said, Gypsy Princess on Rumble says, Frank, check out the L.A. Marzulli YouTube. He has a 2-part interview of Mahdi Hassam Abdullah. Beanie guy. All right, I'll check it out. I'd love to. I mean, I'm not going to get any. I know that a lot of people, and just in the last week, have done a lot of things on him. I've watched a few breakdowns, and just because it had already caught my attention, and it's just from all of the debating that they're growing a little bit more of a following, but you know, they don't have that much subscribership. It's just incredible. And it just takes balls to say that kind of stuff and put it out there and to assume the character and just go with it. I mean, you are committing to the long haul with it. You know, it's like once you put the beanie on, once you pick the costume, and once you commit to that character, you can't say, "Oh yeah, no, I was wrong. I made a mistake." There's nowhere down the line that you can say, "I made a mistake. I am not actually the true heir to the throne of Peter. I'm not I made a mistake. I interpreted a dream of mine wrong. I thought I was the successor to Jesus Christ, but like you can't. That's it. You are in it until something happens. You know? And hopefully the worst that happens is that he's just a homeless guy. I mean, how many crazy homeless guys are out there saying that they're Jesus? That's actually one of my first really big homeless person encounters. You know, I was young. We went to New York City. I forgot what play we were going to or something like that. I was in like middle school or something. And we got out of the play probably like 10:30 at night. I don't know what it was. But there was this lanky black homeless guy who was half naked. He was kind of like doing somersaults and just like dancing wiggly. He was like this spaghetti dance or something like that in the middle of the street in front of the theater. And he was saying that he was Jesus too. And he had something wrapped in his hair. I don't know, it was like gold foil or something like that. It wasn't a crown of thorns or anything, but I was just so like, wow. He thinks he's Jesus. That's crazy. You know? The dancing homeless guy in the middle of the street. I can see this guy ending up like that. Then he can maintain the claim, but aside from that, I'm sure he can shave. He can get rid of the beanie, change his wardrobe up, completely disappear, and then just go become like a stockbroker or something like that, and lead a very private life of prayer and penitence, I guess, and just get back. I guess there's options. I guess there's options for him to reverse course, but man, you're all in when you do something like this. Okay, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. It'll be a good one. It's Wednesday, right? We got BX Investigates coming on. We got some spooky stuff to talk to her about. It's been a long time since she's been on. And that's it. Hey, Would You Blow Me says religion was created when the first con man met the first sucker. Screw all religions. I'll stay agnostic. Well, that sounds like you're a little bit more than agnostic, my friend. Agnostic is, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm reserving judgment. I haven't seen enough to convince me. That seems like you've gone a little bit farther than that. But one way or another, your statement is on the record, my friend. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much. I'm releasing the scratching right now. 7 o'clock in all the usual places. Good night, my friends.
I'll catch you on the flip side.